Hello there, and welcome to the English Language Club. It's Tuesday, so it's time for our weekly Hangout meeting, live stream. We have a few people watching already. We've got number one, nice to see you as always. Uzal is here and asking about tomorrow's Zoom call, so I will we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, if there's anyone else watching, please say hi. Let us know where you're from, and well, just say hi. It's great to hear from you. And as always, get the questions coming in, because the only question we've got is from Uzal about the live stream. So yeah, we need questions, or we're going to run out of things to say. So yes, like last week, we are going to do a live stream again tomorrow. Now, sorry, not a live stream, a Zoom call. And normally these Zoom calls that we're going to start doing, or we have started doing, are going to be for members only, whether that's on YouTube members or Patreons. But for these next few weeks, at least, for the next few weeks, they're going to be, or at least tomorrow, is definitely going to be open to everyone. We're basically, we're just getting started, so we're not getting huge numbers of people. So we're opening it up to everyone until there's too many people to deal with, and in which case we'll limit it just to the members. So so like last week, the link to the Zoom call is right at the bottom of the video description. So Uzal, if you look at the bottom of the page or the bottom of the video, you'll see the link to the Zoom. And there is no password. So you're asking about the password, but there is no password. It's just you'll go to what do they call it, the foyer, and then you get let in, the waiting room, and then you'll get let in. AJ's just joined us from Monaco. Hello there, AJ. How are you doing? Yeah. So how are you doing, Tony? Are you okay?
Oh, pretty good today. I might be having some connection issues, so let me know if I cut out.
Okay. Yeah, well, everything seems fine to me at my end.
Okay, good.
Now, we haven't got many questions in the live stream yet, but we also do have a Discord channel. And we did have one good question from Jack Darby in the Discord. So we're going to start with that, because Tony and I were talking about, we were debating this, and it's funny, I don't think we agree. So this is a good question. So Jack says, I think it's possible to pronounce the R by placing the lower lip below the upper teeth. So now we've got to be clear here. This is the R sound, as in R. What's represented by the R symbol in IPA, in the International Phonetic Alphabet. Wait. So this is not necessarily the letter R.
Okay.
Is that why we were disagreeing, Tony?
Oh no, I just no.
So because often the letter R, at the end of a word like right. Mother, father, it's not pronounced R. It's not pronounced like the phonetic symbol R. So I think that's why there's some confusion sometimes about the letter, this R. So now what Jack says here about placing the lower lip below the upper teeth, I think is right if you are talking about R as a phonetic symbol, but not as a letter, at least not always.
Not always.
So
whenever you pronounce it as an R as opposed to pronouncing it, silently. Yeah.
Yeah, but is as in like the words red, river, right, that r sound. Yes. Yeah. If you look at my lips and my mouth, r. So it's not the lip. It's like the inside of the lip is coming up and touching my top teeth. R. Now I think it doesn't necessarily need to touch. R. You could do it without, but yeah. I think you're right, Jack. But remember, it's not always whenever you see the letter R, because if it's at the end of a word, like brother, it's not the case. Now, we have talked about differences between British and American English with that R sound at the end. Often in British English, it's just a sound, mother, father, brother. In American accent, you tend to make more of an R out of it. So it's
right.
mother,
it is still
mother.
Different. Like an R after a vowel at the end of a syllable is pronounced a little bit differently from an R at the beginning of a syllable. But it's much closer together in American English or Canadian. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. So yeah, Jack isn't here, but hopefully he'll see this. I'll link him to the live stream so that he knows we've talked about it. Hopefully that's helpful, Jack. So yeah, that's another great way. If you've got any questions during the week and you think, I really want those guys to answer that question, join the Discord channel, and you can. There's a Discord server, and there's a channel there specifically for questions for the live stream. So you can ask it there, and we'll make a note of it and probably talk about it on these live streams. But
you can ask a question anytime. Don't have to wait for the live stream, because then you might forget.
Yeah. Great. So AJ says he's a little cold, but I think everyone's a little bit cold.
Oh, is it cold in Monaco these days?
Probably. I'm sure the weather's nicer in Monaco than it is here in Somerset in England. So we had snow, which was interesting.
Yeah, I saw that. It's actually a lot warmer today than it was the last couple of days. It's -2 here.
Okay. Yeah, is it snowy?
Oh yeah, it's snowing really hard right now outside. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll show you guys, but I'm not near a window, so.
Right. Okay. Just to be clear, so I'm in the UK, for those of you who don't know, and Tony is in Canada, so that's why it's cold where he is. Now we've got a lot more people watching now. What's that? Oh, lovely. Yes, great. And we've got a lot more people watching now than we did at the beginning. So yeah, get your questions coming in, because we've answered the one and only question that we had. So we're very soon going to run out of things to say, but we can just keep talking about the weather. AJ says it's 11 degrees, and that's cold for Monaco.
Man. Yeah, I remember living. Some of the places I've lived, 11 degrees would be really, really cold.
yeah, it's sort of relative, isn't it? Weather.
Yeah, here 11 degrees would be like t-shirt weather.
Yeah, like when I lived in South America, I used to set my air conditioning to bring the temperature down to like 25 degrees, and then it felt really nice and cool. Whereas here, I set the heating to bring it up to 20 or 19, 20, and then it feels nice and warm and snug.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas in South America, 25 feels cold. Okay, now Farouk, I think, has a question.
Yes, great.
And before we do that, just a quick shout out to Ladislao joining us on Facebook. Hello to you. And Farouk says, the difference between online teaching and classroom teaching. What are your thoughts, please? So this is obviously a really big issue this year with the current situation in the world. There's a lot more online teaching going on than in the past. Although I've been teaching online for a long time. Yeah. In fact, I now tend to do more of that than I do teaching in classrooms. So I think it depends on who your students are. I think if you're teaching very young, children at school, then it's going to be very difficult. Because you're not in the same physical space. You don't know what your students are doing. You can't, but to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience of that, teaching groups of children online. I've taught one-on-one and maybe a few very small groups, like 1-on-2 in the past, but mostly 1-on-1 online. So yeah, and I've never taught really like children at school. I've taught teenagers and adults in a language institute, but always when they're choosing to be there. You know, they never have to be there. It's because they want to be there. They want to learn. So a lot of that side of teaching, of motivating students and getting them interested, is not something I have a lot of experience with, or the experience that I have is a bit different to what normal teachers or, you know, in schools would have. So Tony, you might have a different take on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're really different things, and they require different methods, right? And there's also a lot of different kind of online teaching, right? There's things like this where we're just answering questions, but we're not, you know, speaking directly with people so much, except we do on the Zoom call, and then that's a completely different thing, right? If you are just doing kind of one-on-one, or one person at a time is talking and you can do conversation practice, that's very similar to teaching in person, right? A conversation class over Zoom is just about the same. But then, like, teaching an entire classroom full of people live can be very challenging, like Colin said, because you don't know what the different students are doing. And then sometimes you just, you know, record video lectures and people watch it on their own time, right? And that's very different from actually teaching in a classroom, right? So yeah, they're challenging, and unfortunately, not all teachers who are good at one of those things are necessarily going to be good at the other one. And right now, a lot of people are having to learn. A lot of teachers, a lot of schools, a lot of institutions are having to learn to be good at online teaching really quickly, right?
And that's the problem, I think, at the moment, is that people have been thrown in at the deep end, and they're unprepared, and they're trying to do something that's not necessarily their strength, against their will, in a way. So it's a difficult situation at the moment for a lot of teachers. But I remember even as far back as 2011, when I was teaching in South America, there was this people were just starting to realize the opportunities of the internet, and well, not just the internet, but YouTube especially, and things like that for teaching. And there was a concept called flipping the classroom. I don't know. Have you ever heard that expression, Tony?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So flipping the classroom is basically where, in the past, you used to teach something the teacher would teach the students in the classroom, and then they would go away and do some homework to practice that, some, you know, exercises to practice that. But flipping the classroom is a way of, like, using things like YouTube and you know, recorded media online, using the internet to do that the other way around. So you can get students to go home and do homework, which is where they watch a video and learn something, and then in the classroom they do the practice, and then they're doing the practice with the help of a teacher. So instead of just the teacher standing there and talking, and then they go home and practice it, they can do the lecture side of thing just by watching a recorded video, and then when they come and if they have, you know, the teacher can then check if they've understood that better, because they have more time. So I think that's a really good thing. That's something there's been a movement towards that over the last decade. I don't know.
Well, it's also important to remember that online learning is not nearly as new as we think it is. I took online classes when I was in high school, like 20 years ago. And I was not the first student in my area to be taking online classes. They had already been doing it for several years. So online classes, there are people who've been doing it for probably 25 years now, and have learned a lot. But then there's also every couple of years, there's a new wave of people who are just trying it and come up with ideas for what they think work. But there are also tried and true principles that have been around for a really long time.
Yeah. But so yeah, I think in summary, I think the future is going to be a mix, or continue to be a mix of online and classroom learning. And I do think we haven't found that, or at least most teachers are not using the internet optimally yet. But so I think the future is looking good for that kind of thing. And perhaps the way things that are happening in the world right now is going to accelerate that transition and that progress in that area. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. We've got a quick question here from AJ. He says, do you recommend listening to English to learn it, even if you don't understand most of it?
That's a really good question. However, I think the answer really does depend on the person. Some people are going to have either the ear for it or the patience to listen to something and pick out words and be like, oh, I think I understand what that word means, and learn a lot. Other people won't necessarily learn a lot, but it won't be a problem either. But for some people, listening to a language you don't understand just messes with your head and makes you feel confused and upset and frustrated. And so if you're one of those people, then don't force yourself to listen to it if it's just making you upset, right? Yeah. I think the key really to listening to English to learn is that you want it to be multiple different senses, and you want it to be something you can control when possible. So for instance, watching a movie with subtitles on, right? So then you're listening, you're reading, you can pause it, right? Listening to a podcast or an audiobook is especially can be good because you can back it up. And often podcasts or audiobooks will have a transcript that you can read along with it as well. And then you can pause, you can back up, you can listen to the word again, you can look up words that you don't know. Really, if you're trying to listen for learning, you want to have as many different things going on as you can in terms of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're watching people's mouth move, and also being able to pause, being able to look up words.
Yeah. Yes, I think that possibly what AJ is getting at is, are you going to learn anything just from listening, even if you don't understand any of it? And I would say probably no. But the way that learning a language works is that you learn, even at whatever stage you're at, you'll be able to pick out some things that you do understand.
Yes.
And then from other signals like body language, you might be able to, or context, then you can kind of guess what the rest of it is about. So right. if you don't understand anything, then you've got nothing to build on, and I don't think that that's going to be of benefit. But if as long as you're understanding a few bits then that is going to be helpful. And
that's the tricky part of this question is most of it, right? If you do not understand any English, or hello, goodbye, and nothing else in between, this is not going to help you, right? Unless you just have a really good ear, or you're listening and reading at the same time and looking up words, like I was saying. But if you understand like 10% of English, 20% of English, then this is the best way for you to learn, because you're learning enough that then you're beginning to pick up combinations of words, sentences that you've never heard before, but you figure out what they mean based on the words you have heard, and so on. So the more English you know, the more important this is to learn by listening, even if you still feel like you don't understand most of it. That's okay. You have to be able to understand a pretty significant percentage of the words that people are using to truly be able to say, well, I understood it completely. So most English speakers are going to be in this category somewhere, or most English learners, right? Somewhere between, knowing a little bit of it, 10%, but they don't know 75 or 80% of it yet, right?
Great. Well, this kind of ties in quite well with Susanta, who's joining us today. Hello, Susanta.
Always good to see you, Susanta.
And I know that I can see that we've already got lots of questions from them later on. And so this is what they're doing. They obviously don't understand everything they hear or see. So they are, writing things down and studying those things to fill those gaps, which is great. And that's one of the things that we like to help people with here. So we've got some questions from Susanta coming up. But let's just see before we get to that. Another quick one from AJ. How can you develop writing and spelling after you've learned to speak the language? Writing and spelling.
So spelling is such a tricky thing,
especially in English.
Well, no, I mean not that. I mean, obviously, yes, English spelling is tricky, but in terms of when people ask me, you know, how do I improve my spelling? I always want to know, well, why do you need to improve your spelling, right? If you're in university, improving your spelling is really important because you need to be able to write papers and things like this, and spend less time constantly checking your work.
In which case, you're probably writing on a computer where there's going to be spell checkers. So as long as you make sure you got that kind of thing set up, there's also something like Grammarly, which is going to help with that.
And that becomes the best way to improve your spelling. Write a lot. Like if you're in university and you have to improve your spelling, write a lot. Try words that you don't know how to spell, then use the spell check or look it up in a dictionary, figure out how it was spelled. But I don't necessarily recommend then you like, okay, I learned how to spell the word demagogue. I'm going to memorize this word. Well, no, you had to use it in that paper. That doesn't mean you're going to have to use it again. Don't spend your time memorizing how that word was spelled. If this is one of those things that comes with practicing a lot, and the more times you misspell a word and are able to correct it, the more the more words you're going to learn. So that's for people who are in university and really need to improve their spelling. For most people, improving your spelling is not going to help you communicate better, right? No. In most situations, like texting, this kind of stuff. But again, you have access to spell checkers when you're doing that, right? So I'm not a big fan of learning spelling, as in memorizing how words are spelled. I am a big fan of learning phonetics and learning roots, but it's just a matter of priority. For instance, I'd never tell someone who's trying to learn English, you should learn a little bit of Latin, then you'll be a lot better at spelling English words. Well, no, that's too much of a detour. I would tell that to a native English speaker who's in high school, for instance, and wants to improve their spelling. Like, here, learn some Latin roots, and that will help you. But in terms of learning English as an additional language, I just really don't feel that spelling is something you should really emphasize unless you are in university, you're studying in English. That's my take on it. I know that would make some English teachers really angry. No, spelling is so important. You have to memorize lists of words. Like, I was taught English for years, and I just don't think that that's as high a priority as a lot of people say that it is.
Yeah, and I think here at the English Language Club, we are teaching English, for people who actually want to go and use it and express themselves, whether that's because they want to move to an English-speaking country or
for business
or whatever,
listen to rock music or whatever.
Yeah, it's not just about we're not just about helping people pass exams so they have a piece of paper that says they speak English. We're about helping people actually be able to speak English.
Yes.
So spelling isn't really that important for that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of spelling has been considered important for a long time, and so a lot of tests.
It's because it's easy to test.
It's because you're right. It's just because it's easy. It's a lazy way to test English ability. But in reality, anytime that you're spelling a word, therefore not saying it, you have access to tools. Like even if you're writing a text and you are like, I need to spell the word. Whatever, any word, you can just look it up, or you can say, okay, Google, how do you spell fewer? Right?
Careful, you're gonna set people's devices off if you do that.
Sorry. But that like seriously, unless you need it for a course, and that doesn't mean that you should just completely ignore spelling. When you pick up, you realize, oh hey, I noticed this pattern. That words are spelled this way. These words, but maybe they're pronounced similarly, maybe they're pronounced differently, or whatever. It's okay to pay attention to it. It's okay to get better at it, especially if you're also learning pronunciation. The more phonetics you learn, there are not rules that are always true, but there are common patterns that connect pronunciation to spelling, even in English. And so there's nothing wrong with learning those, but it's just not, to me, something that should be a really high priority. Again, unless You just have to pass your courses. It's always frustrating because, you know, sometimes people will ask us, this was a question I had on a test. What's the answer to this? And it's hard for us to answer because the way English is taught is so different in so many different places and with different people that sometimes, you know, our goal is to help you speak English, but sometimes that's not necessarily just the goal of the class. The class might have very specific goals, and the teacher might be using different terminology. You know, it might be older terminology, or it might be just terminology that's used in a different part of the world. And so it's very challenging sometimes because what you need to pass a course depends on that course. And so that's harder for us to help you with. Whereas, what do you need to speak English? That is what we're here for. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Now, speaking of which, let's get on to Susanta's question, because we've got 4 questions from Susanta, who says, so the first one, what does patchy mean? Pretty patchy season here. So, pretty patchy season. Well, a patch is like a little piece of material that you could stick on clothing to repair it.
Well,
that's one use of the word.
Yeah, a patch means like a smallish section, right?
Yeah.
So a patch in clothing is a small piece of cloth that you sew over a hole or something like that. A garden patch would be, you know, you don't have a
patch of grass.
Garden. You don't have a farm. You have a garden patch, a small patch. If your grass is patchy, then instead of growing in one solid thick lawn, you've got a clump of grass here, a clump of grass here, and each one of those is a patch of grass. So a patch is like a small section.
Yeah. So the adjective patchy means small sections. It's not one consistent texture.
Right. So for instance, if you're following a sports team and you say they've had a patchy season, I don't feel like I've heard this phrase, but what it sounds like it means is, you know, sometimes we do really well. We've had a clump of wins, and then we go a long time without a win, and then we have another clump of really great games, and then we lose a bunch again. Like, instead of being consistent, like, oh, we're winning 60% of our games, it's all, you know, there's patches of wins and patches of losses. Right, that's what it sounds like.
But if this quote "pretty patchy season" is referring to the weather, then it could be that the weather's changing. Sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's sunny. It's maybe difficult to predict.
Sure. Patchy is a very versatile because the meaning is so simple, like small sections, right?
Yeah.
And so it's such a versatile description that you can use for lots of different things. My beard is patchy. My beard isn't patchy, but some people's beards are patchy, right? All kinds of things. Like, you know, have you been successful? Well, you know, I don't know. It's very, but it always means that same thing. Instead of being even and regular, it's small sections and that are uneven. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the next one. Susanta says, what does a missile without direction mean? So this is not a common idiomatic expression, but presumably this is being used metaphorically. It's
not a very good metaphor, though, because a missile.
Well, I think
it hasn't been launched yet. A missile can't have no direction. But I think,
but it's put in the mind of someone who's using it figuratively.
Right, but so I think what they're trying to say is, like, if you just launch a missile and you don't know where it is going, right? You know you're going to cause some damage, but you don't know whether that damage is going to be in a place that you wanted it or some random place you didn't want it. Right? So this gives the idea of you're doing something dangerous and you don't know what the consequences will be. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't think I think there would be a better way to put that, like a missile out of control or something like this, or a missile without steering or something. It could mean by direction here, and like direction can mean like what direction it's facing, but it can also mean someone controlling it, someone steering it. Right, the person directing the missile. So it could be a missile that's like fired and has lost its ability to be controlled, so it can't be steered anymore. which is the same as like a bus that without, with no steering wheel. You're saying, oh, it's going to do some damage, but it's unpredictable what it's going to do.
Yeah. Okay, we got two more questions from Susanta, and then we're going to get on to Farouk, your question again about teaching online. And quick shout out before that to Naman, who says, how are you guys? My favorite English YouTubers doing? I'm doing great. So yeah, thank you. I'm really glad you can join us.
And Susanta, I don't mean to say like people use metaphors all the time that are not common idioms, right? And so that's okay. Like it's not. I mean, if you heard it on the BBC, I'm sure they knew what they were talking about. It's just, to me, it's not a very good metaphor.
Well, it depends what it's a metaphor for.
Well, it depends on what they were talking about, like how.
We've only heard the one sentence. We would need to hear more context to understand that what they were getting at.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it bad English, for instance. Just because people use metaphors that aren't great metaphors all the time. I do all the time. If you don't think about it, if you don't have time to kind of think about it ahead of time, metaphors can be tricky. It can be very tricky.
Yeah,
in any language.
Great. Okay, now. What does corny mean? That was corny was the sentence.
Yeah.
Now, did we talk about this a couple of weeks ago? I can't remember.
I don't think so. Corny is such a weird word to describe. It means funny, but like badly done humor, like a little kid.
A corny joke. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something like it's like off and weird, but like meant to be funny. The way I think of it is it's something that would be funny to a little kid or like a young teenager or something like that. Not like AJ saying, like dad jokes.
Jokes,
like just but sometimes you'll see it used even when it's not about humor. Someone is trying to be meaningful, right? They're trying to say something deep, and they say something that doesn't make sense, and someone says, "Oh, that's just corny."
Let's do a quick competition. Let's see who can come up with. You can use Google if you like, but who can put in the best corny joke in the comments will win a virtual high five from me. So yeah, let's see if we get any corny jokes to illustrate what corny means. So that'll be great. Now, the next question from Susanta is, I defend the Constitution. What does this mean?
Imagine why she would have heard this in the news recently.
Yeah, well, this is definitely one for you, being the American here.
So the specifically here is this is using the word Constitution to mean the document that defines a nation's government. In the U.S., it's a literal document, like written on one piece of paper or whatever. But in other places, it's not. Like, so the British Constitution, for instance, is really more like a collection of traditions and some such as this. But what it means is it's whatever defines a government. The core rules that define a government are the Constitution. So if someone says they defend the Constitution, that just means they defend what they believe is the core of what makes that country its core laws. Usually you hear this from a judge, right? Whose job it is to decide whether a law is legal or not, right?
Right. Sorry, I've been Googling corny jokes, so maybe.
Oh no, I see.
Read some of those out later. We got one from AJ. I'm not sure I like it though, because it's a little bit sexist, but I'll read it anyway. So why did the blonde bring a ladder to the party? She heard the drinks were on the house. Yes, that's very corny and also a bit sexist.
For those of you, you could spell it without the E and it could be a he. Why did the blonde bring a ladder to the party? He heard drinks were on the house. So just so those of you know, drinks on the house is an idiom that means free. On the house means free.
Yeah, because it comes from. I guess it comes from the days when pubs used to be. Well, pub comes from the word public house. So a pub was just a house in the village that the owner would open up to the public and let people come in, and he'd feed them, and that was how he made a living. And then these places became pubs. So they were houses. They were public houses. So on the house just meant that the house was paying for it.
Right.
So that's where that expression comes from. Yeah. Great. Okay. So did we get through? Have we got through everything?
No, we had Farouk Omar's question.
Yes. So yes, that's talking about online teaching again. So since you have experience teaching online for people who want to learn, of course, what are the teaching tools needed? And do we need high quality webcam? Thank you again.
I don't have a high quality webcam.
I mean, yeah, and you know what? I don't have a particularly high quality webcam either. I think my webcam cost me £10 or £20. So it's not, you know, my microphone was more expensive. That was like £50. But I got that because I started doing a podcast. And my webcam does have an inbuilt microphone. So, you know, I think I wouldn't worry. Don't let technology be the reason you don't do
right.
things. Don't. I think there is a minimum. If you've got a webcam and you can broadcast sound and video, I think that's a bare minimum. I wouldn't worry about it being super high quality because even the cheap stuff now is very good.
Right. And the thing that you want to keep in mind too is don't try to fix a problem that you don't have. If people can't see you and they can't learn from you, the video quality isn't good enough for them to watch your mouth, or something like that.
Or they can't hear you clearly. Yeah.
Right. As long as you're not having that problem, you don't need to upgrade your machinery. And another example is, I think what's more important than a high quality webcam is lighting. If you you can have a really, really good webcam, but if you're backlit and your room is dark, nobody will be able to see you, right? So read online how to do lighting. There's a lot of complicated ways to do it, but just make sure that you're well lit so that people can see you, right?
Yeah.
And what is well lit for you will be a little bit different depending, right? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. And I think one thing that's probably far more important than the quality of your equipment is your quality of your internet connection.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, even we don't get it. You know,
and you can only do so much. Like I've worked in office buildings that paid tens of thousands of dollars for their internet connection, and it still went out. You know, sometimes
internet connections are always patchy, even the best of times. So. Yeah. I was just trying to use the word patchy there. Don't know if you know.
Yes, exactly. Patchy internet. That's very common.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's a question from number 1, who says, "Is there any difference between will be or going to in uses?"
And Susanta's already answering this question. This is like what Santa is saying. I'm sorry, Susanta. Susanta is saying is very true. Like we tend to use will for something that is happening, but that we're going to. We use to announce what we are planning to do. However, you've got to be careful about that because those are not like hard and fast rules about this. I think. Yeah. The only hard and fast rule, is that when you tell people your plan, you say going to. You don't say, I will. I mean, you can, but you're not if you're telling them as your plan. So you say, I'm going to call you later. You're telling them that's your plan. Whereas if you just say, I'll call you later, right? You're not communicating a plan. But that's still perfectly okay to say, I'll call you later, even though that is a plan that you have, right? Or or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can use going to when it's not a plan. I am going to be in so much trouble when I get home, or whatever, right?
Then it's a sort of inevitable consequence.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in textbooks, they generally, this is how they describe the difference. They do tend to say, yeah, will is for a sort of spontaneous decision. if you're in a restaurant and you are handed a menu, and in the moment of deciding what you're going to have, you say, "I'll have the steak," because you've just made that decision there and then. Or as we've said, going to is if you already have the plan. That's how they describe it. In reality, the two mean there's a lot of overlap, and you can sometimes use one or the other. Like I could say, I'm going on holiday to America next week. I'm going to go to New York first, and then I'll go to Florida, and then I'll go to Las Vegas.
And that's a really, yeah, exactly. That's a good example of where it's very explicitly you're telling someone your plan, and then so saying going to is much more common. But once you've established, so what you did was you said, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'll do this. Once you've established that this is a plan, you don't need that anymore, and then it's easier to just say will as using the contraction, right? I'll or whatever, and so that's what you slip into. So. And it's more complicated than this too, because there's actually like 5 or 6 different categories, and then each one of them is more common to use one or the other. But the reality is, in virtually every situation, they both are acceptable, and they are both commonly used for virtually any different combination. So yeah.
And there's also the present continuous with a future time marker.
Yes.
So like there's a different, like if I say I'm going to go on holiday, that's using going to. But if I say I'm going on holiday next week, that's technically using the present continuous with a future time marker to talk about the future, although they sound very similar.
And then you've also
could say I'm traveling next week as well. That would be the
right. And you could also have the future continuous, which sometimes means exactly the same thing. I'll be going to on holiday next week still means I'm announcing a plan. So there's 3 different ways you can do that at minimum. So yeah, it's announcing future plans is something that there are a lot of different ways to do it in English, and there aren't really wrong ways to do it unless you're using a past tense.
Yeah. I mean, there aren't really wrong. I don't know.
I mean, I'm exaggerating there. I'm exaggerating there. There are definitely wrong ways to do it, right? But there are so many right ways to do it that you should not try to learn when to use the different ones as much as understanding that they all mean very close to the same thing.
I think this is the kind of thing where there are so many rules, but the rules get very complicated, and it's better just to kind of try to just know that it's good to know these basic rules, like what Susanta's
saying, exactly.
And then beyond that, yes, there's lots of other different ways you can do it. You can break the rules. I think this is what
this is like that, but it's even one step further in that the reality is that those rules aren't even particularly general. Like you'll hear people say going to announce a plan, but you will probably just as often hear people use will to announce a plan. So it's there. This is, I think, a good example of one of those things where people, the kind of people who really want to put rules on English have looked at it and they've analyzed which is more common, and they're kind of missing the fact that both are still very common.
Now we've got a great follow-up question from Susanta, but that's the last thing in the chat. So if so keep your questions coming in, because we do need to have some things to talk about. That we are here just to answer your questions. So yeah, Susanta says, do we use shall nowadays? So yes, shall has become a little antiquated. Shall I? Because so that's often used as a question. Like, we still use it for questions. I think. Shall we? Like, for making a suggestion. Shall we go to the restaurant?
Yeah.
But it's not used so much in making positive statements. Like, I shall go now. If you do use it, it's like that. It's like being very emphatic, being very dramatic. But
I think it also fits into our commonly we return to this idea of indirectness, because it's an uncommon, more like unusual way to say something. It becomes more polite and more formal, but then in almost like kind of a funny way. Shall we go? Right? It's not used commonly seriously, I would say.
I don't know about that. I think it is used seriously, but it's just yeah, it's definitely, I would say it's definitely used more in questions than anything else. And yeah, like you said, it's indirect. It makes things indirect, because you could just say, "Let's go,"
right.
Or "I think we should go now." But by making it a question, you make it less direct and therefore more polite. So that.
I will also say, Susanta, nowadays is never spelled as multiple words. It's always all one word nowadays.
Okay. Great. We just had a question come through from Edu, who says, "Is the contraction there for they are, right? And how would you pronounce it?" So yes, that's right. So not there are. That's right. There.
Or there were.
There were. Yeah, would you contract there were?
You probably would.
I think. Yeah, I think I would just say there were.
Yeah.
So yes, you're right, and so that is pronounced there, which is a very strange word, because there is many different words. It's the same pronunciation for lots of different words. So if it was spelt THEIR, as in that is their house.
Well, then you could say there are.
No, it's not there are, but it is still there.
Yeah.
It's pronounced their house, and it's the same pronunciation. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because I think this question is as much about the pronunciation as it is about.
I think the question is, how do you pronounce that with the contraction? So, like, normally you would almost still pronounce this there are, but with just shorten it. So some people will say there're, but that's awkward. For the most part, when people say you see this contraction, people are still going to say there are, but they're just going to say it quickly. There are 4 of them. Now, I'm not really saying there. I'm saying there are quickly. There are 4 of them. There are 4 of them, and so on.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, there. Yeah, because there are. It's like you just put like a schwa in there. There are. Yeah.
Rather than there are. Yeah, you say there are 4 of them. So you're still saying that this is an example of where there's a contraction, but it's not actually. The Zoom link is already in the description, is it not, Colin? Yeah, the Zoom link is in the description.
Yes. Yeah, there's so if you've been watching since right at the beginning or before the beginning, you might need to refresh the page, because I only added the link to the Zoom call just before we started. So yeah, if you go right to the bottom of the description, you'll see the link to the Zoom call there.
Yeah, it's right there at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So the Zoom call. We are for the last few weeks we've done a Zoom call. It's been very slow going. Not many people have come. But last week we had a couple of people. So yeah, we're hoping that these will gather momentum. The Zoom the invitation to it is right at the bottom of the description of this on this page. So if you use that, you can join us tomorrow on Zoom. Yeah, and I hope many of you will be able to come, especially those of you who've been following us for a long period of time, Susanta and Lolly. Yeah, I'd really like to meet you guys properly. So, yeah. Okay. If we're running out of questions, so if you do have any questions, yeah, let us know. And yeah, we can answer them. Do you want to talk a little bit about Inside English?
Yeah. So the oh man. Yeah, so like, of course, definitely check out our course, the Inside English. Go to englishlanguageclub.co.uk and you can find it. And so then like, again, we talk about a lot of these things, that we don't suggest people, learning long lists of rules and memorizing when something, goes in which category, because we really feel that the way to truly understand a language is to learn the core rules. Its constitution, so to speak, the things that make everything fit together and make everything make sense, right? So for instance, in Inside English, we talk about our 3 big ideas that make all of tense kind of make sense. Looking at the structure of virtually every English sentence is going to fit into one of 3 categories. So learning those is going to help you with virtually every sentence, right? Learning to take apart tense and understanding the 2 parts of tense is going to help you, instead of trying to memorize, okay, what is this one tense for? Like, what is this other tense for? Past continuous. What are all the list of things I need to use that for? Well, instead, if you learn what the past part of it means and what the continuous part of it means, then you can think about what you're going to say and figure out which tense fits that. Or the other way around, like what you see a tense and you say, okay, I understand what that means at its core, right? And that's going to help you understand how it's being used. And so on. So the Inside English course is all about trying to peel back the layers of complexity and rules that have exceptions, and really honing in on the core ideas. And we really feel like understanding how things work at a very basic level will help you learn faster, and it'll help you speak with more confidence.
Yeah. So yeah, and we've got lots of other things going on now. Things are growing. Like I said, we've got the Discord channel or the Discord server. We answered a question from there today at the beginning of this live stream. So head on over there, and maybe we can chat to you during the week. And if you have any questions, you can leave them there at any time. We've got a special channel just for that. But again, that's something that's just getting started. So it'd be really great to get more people on there, so we can actually, get that started. The other thing that I'd really like to do on Discord is a couple of times we've had people realizing they're in the same country, and in the live stream chat and chatting to each other on the live stream chat. That's great, but I'd really like to move that kind of conversation over to Discord. Yeah. So it'd be great to set up. It'd be great to set up some country-specific sub-channels on the Discord, so that people can perhaps meet up with each other and get some conversation practice. We can get little clubs set up all around the world. That would be really great. So yeah, I think Discord will be the place for that. And then go on.
And definitely, definitely don't forget to find that link in the description at the very bottom, and join us tomorrow for the Zoom chat.
I'm just going to put it in the chat now. That's the link for the Zoom tomorrow. So if you click on that, so it'll be the same time as this tomorrow, 2 o'clock UK time, whatever time that is in where you are. If you go to that link, you should be able to join us in the Zoom call. And now tomorrow it's actually also going to go live on YouTube. So if you don't want to, be part of it, you can still watch it, and hopefully we can still read your comments and answer your questions on YouTube as well. But hopefully you'll join us, and it'll be great to actually meet you.
Yeah.
So we do have one more question here from Chioma. Chioma, can you elaborate more on stress and intonation in English? So stress and intonation are 2 different things, really, right? So stress is like in English, every word tends to have one stress. One vowel sound is stressed. So that changes the way we pronounce the word. So, if, for example, elaborate is the a is the stressed. It's not elaborate. Elaborate, that would be wrong. So yeah, so you kind of need to know which vowel is stressed, because in other languages every vowel is sort of equally stressed,
or multiple ones or whatever.
Yeah. So that, I think that's one of the one of the things that people have to get used to in English is the stress. And so sometimes it is written on the phonetic script with a little apostrophe. I haven't tended to focus too much on stress, because I feel like it's sort of very, if you're hearing a word and how it's meant to be pronounced, then you're going to pick up the stress quite naturally. So I haven't tended to talk much about it. I don't want to get too into like phonetics as a science, the science of it, because like we said, we're all about, just helping people actually be able to speak English without getting into these very academic rabbit holes almost, which become a distraction. So that's why we've resisted talking too much about that. But I think stress is important. And yeah,
it's mainly a thing that you have to learn by listening. The rules are more complicated than it's worth the time. Like in some languages, the rules for stress are very specific, but not so much in English. So it really is one of those things that just be open, like ask people to correct you if you stress a word wrong. Also, you can always look it up in the dictionary. A dictionary will almost always tell you which syllable is stressed. That doesn't give you the whole of it necessarily. You still might be getting it a little bit wrong, but knowing which syllable to stress is usually enough to be understood, right? Which is what's important.
Yeah.
So Chip has a question about stress as well, about stress of the prefix of verbs.
Yeah. So I'm not 100% sure what you mean there.
Or maybe this question isn't actually about stress. Is the question, do you stress the prefix more? Do you usually put stress on the prefix?
So at the beginning of a verb? Can you stress more about the prefix of English verbs?
Or is the question just asking more about the prefix?
Yeah. So I mean, prefixes are a useful thing for word formation to make other words, if that's what you mean. So if you say the word do, for example, you can make it negative, or you can make it the opposite by saying undo. Or you can you're using the prefix un. So the prefix un often makes it the opposite. Or you could use a prefix redo. So to run, you can have a rerun, or you can redo something. You can reread something. So that prefix re means do something again, repeat. What other prefixes are there, Tony? Well, so you can make something again the negative by, like, you can have the word possible and then impossible. Polite, impolite.
Yeah.
Can you think of any more?
Those are really the main ones, right? There's a lot of other ones that, like a means also, like a prefix also means to make something opposite, that kind of thing. Con means with. There's lots of different ones out there, but those are probably the most common ones in terms of, like, if you're intentionally changing a word, re or im or un.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to know. It's good to learn prefixes and suffixes, because it can be really helpful to make for word formation, for converting verbs into nouns or adverbs. It's actually it's quite easy and regular, the rules for doing that. So yeah, that's a really good thing to learn. Maybe we should do a lesson on that. That would be good. Okay, well. I think we are we've come to the end of our time. I'm just going to bring this chat up from myself. So hopefully tomorrow you can all join us on Zoom. This is the meeting ID. It's going to be free to everyone, not just to members tomorrow, but in future weeks it will be just for members, and it will also go live on YouTube. So you can just watch it here, but if you really want to take part, then you need to head on over to Zoom. Yeah. So yeah, I really hope you'll join us tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.